I'm Steph Garcia with AthleticDirectorU, and I am delighted to be joined today by Gerald Harrison, Athletic Director at Austin Peay. Thanks for joining me.
Glad to be here.
We have to start with this big breaking news that came out recently. Can you give us some insight into how the F&M Bank deal with the Predators came together?
It's actually pretty awesome. It was a thought of our county mayor who wanted to build an arena in Clarksville, and that actually predated me. But it never really got off the ground, kind of. They talked to the Predators. The Predators were like, Austin Peay has to be involved. And then the president at the time said, let's get together, let's make it happen. And so a lot of work with Sean Henry, the CEO of the Predators, Nat Harden, and then our county mayor, Jim Durrett, and our president. We came together and said, let's try to make it work. Got in a room, we hammered out the details. They're like, what do you need? We listed it out, and they said yes, and I was like, hallelujah.
Yes.
And the deal it came together, but it's been so much more than we ever thought it was going to be. This is exactly what we dreamed of.
Well, what impact will this have on Austin Peay Athletics, both from a revenue generation, facility access, but also from a student experience standpoint?
Well, it gives you one from a student experience part. It gives us the premier basketball facility from a mid-major standpoint, not just in our conference, but in the entire area. So that's going to give us a new sense of pride that we have. It gives us a great classroom for because it has a basketball practice facility. So our student athletes has a place they call home that's their basketball practice facility. The coaches' offices are there, so it's going to boost the recruiting and the energy level around. So that's what it's going to do from a student standpoint. What it does from a university standpoint, it's a continuation of the town and gown. So the university is now extended into downtown, and we get to grow that relationship with Clarksville, which is one of the fastest growing cities in America. So that's awesome. And then obviously from a revenue standpoint, we got more seats, more premium amenities. When you partner with an organization like the Preds and the innovators like Sean Henry and what they've done in Bridgestone Arena, we get to bring a smaller version of that to Clarksville. So, we got more suites, more club areas, and opportunities for fans to be really engaged and excited about Austin Peay basketball.
Shifting gears a little bit, we really want to know how it works behind the scenes for an athletic director and their head coaches. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about how you meet with your coaches. Do you have a set schedule, or do they determine when they want to meet with you? How does it work?
Well, it's a little bit of a hybrid of that, actually. We have certain coaches that I have a standing meeting with every week, every 2 weeks, so on. We have a monthly coaches meeting with all of our head coaches, and it's just me. And so I have our staff comes in, they kind of do announcements, but it's just me in a room with them, and they get to talk about what's concerning them as coaches. Our head coaches meetings, it's more of a one-on-one, tell me what's going on, I'll tell you how I feel about things. So it's a great conversation away from everything.
When you're making that head coaching hire, are there any specific characteristics that really stand out to you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm an energy guy. I'm a big energy guy. So people who are passionate about what they're doing, not just the sport. See, I think that's the mistake people make. We're not hiring coaches anymore. We're hiring CEOs. Mm-hmm. So you got to hire a person that can deal with the student athletes and their development, who can hire great people, who can deal with the community and the people outside of the program, but also have good X's and O's and understand their sport. So I'm looking for energy, and you got to be passionate about all of those things. And that's probably the linchpin. That's the first thing. I cannot stand people who don't come with the juice. They got to have some energy about them and passion. That doesn't mean people misunderstand that. That doesn't mean running around losing their mind, even though our football coach is one of those folks. But it can be a reserved passion, but when you talk to them, that they love what they do and they have an organizational plan. And so that's what we look at. Very little during our interview process. I don't talk about the X's and O's very much at all. It's about them, the program, and how they're going to build it.
So when you meet one-on-one with head coaches, is there an agenda set, or how do you, keep track of how the conversations go over the course of a season?
Well, I tell our coaches, you come with something and I'll bring something. I don't, very rarely, if I have an agenda, that means we have had a set number of things that have taken place or transpired that we have to address, and those aren't a part of, those meetings aren't scheduled. That's something totally different. When it comes to their one-on-ones, I want them to come in and talk. I try to take everything off my desk, and it's just me and them, and I'm leaning and they're leaning, and we're just having a conversation. But if they have some things that we need to outline, we'll discuss it, and I'll throw some things out there, some concerns. I have a legal pad. Stan Wilcox is a mentor of mine. He always had a yellow legal pad, and I think I've adopted that. So I have my yellow legal pad, and I write down the notes, and we'll keep them for every meeting. So I have a folder, and so I can pull it back and say, okay, we talked about this, and here's my response, or here's our answer to that. But most of the time, it's just conversation. I'm a conversationalist.
Yep.
And I believe you get more from people when they believe they can talk to you and communicate with you. And so that's really the focus of our meetings.
So if and when there are differences between maybe a decision that you...
Those happen?
Hopefully, probably not at Austin Peay, but
Yeah.
In some places, if there are differences between maybe a decision a head coach made or a decision that you and your department have made, how do you reconcile those?
Well, honestly, at the end of the day, we have to make the decision what's best for our 350 student athletes and 16 varsity sports. And I tell our coaches, I hear you. I'm going to listen to everything you have to say, and I'm going to take it to heart. But sometimes the buck stops with me, and I have to make a decision. And they're not always going to like it. And we have those conversations, and I let them vent. I encourage them, bring your energy, bring it. If you got something to say, but at the end of the day, I'm going to bring it too. And I'm going, yes, 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 and yes. But no, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is why we have to do it. And a lot of times that happens because, you're dealing with your footballs. They may not understand the struggles of the tennis, or they may not understand the struggle of the track team. And so you kind of have to educate them, and I try to put them in my seat. Here's why I'm making this decision. And I explain it all to them. I don't hide it from them. And sometimes I tell them point blank, this is not my decision either, because I got a boss, right? And so, but I reconcile just by really telling them here's how we did it. Here's the layout. And if they don't get it still, then they just go away upset, and we'll get over it. Just like a brother and sister arguing in the house, we'll get over it.
Well, you are the athletic director. You're overseeing all these student athletes, all these programs, all these coaches, and all these administrators. That's a lot. So how deep into the weeds do you get with specific coaching issues, roster management, scholarship allocations? Do you let the coaches make the decisions, or do you like to be in the conversation?
I try to let them make the decisions. I hire head coaches, and I hire people, like I said, they're CEOs that should be able to manage their roster and do those things. So as far as I'm concerned, I say, okay, here's the number of scholarships that you have. Here's your budget. Make it work. I don't ever want to take the scalpel and start making the decisions on what to cut, what not to cut, who to cut. That's not my job. That is their job to manage it. And so I really try to stay out of those weeds. Now, don't get me wrong. There's times where they'll come ask, hey, here's my situation. This student athlete's not working out. I'd like to make this change, that. And I'll have the conversation with them. That's why we try to be conversationalists. So I'll have that with them. But as far as telling them what to do, I will never give them this one or this, unless it's some crazy discipline issue where we have no choice. But
right, but not at Austin Peay.
But that outside of that, it's their decision.
Yep. Similarly, how do you like to divvy up sports oversight roles with your senior staff?
Well, I gauge them about what's their interest, really. Because I would love to cookie cut people and say everybody wants to be an AD or everybody wants to have sport oversight. And sometimes you have people in leadership that don't. That's not what they want to do, and I don't force it on them. But I was fortunate enough to work for Kevin White, who believed that we should all have an opportunity to lead, and to be having sport administrative and sport oversight is a part of that. And so I try to encourage them all to take a sport. And some of them come to me and say, hey, I really am interested in this one. And then if it works out, I try to accommodate that. Obviously, the sports that have a lot larger sports have a lot more challenges too. We try to be a little bit more seasoned with that, and think of the time commitment that those guys take. I mean, football sport administrator is working all the time, plus whatever job you have them to do. So everybody don't really jump on that one. That's a different one to deal with. But it's more of a, you fit this coach. Sometimes that's a big one. I'm probably going on a little bit, but the personalities with the coaches is a big one, because everybody can't. If you got a type A personality and a coach that is all over that may not work as well. Mm-hmm. So you got to consider all that when you go into matching people.
So it's a bit of a case-by-case basis.
It is definitely a case-by-case basis, which I think the majority of athletics is. I don't think you get to put, this is how we're going to do this every way, every place. I don't think that works very well.
No one path.
Not at all.
So what is the communication process when it comes to a staff change for a head coach? So if a head coach says, it's not working out with my assistant or even a grad assistant level, how do you communicate through that process with them?
Well, I tell them to inform me, keep me informed of what's going on. But again, you hire coaches, I hire head coaches, and they got to manage their staff. The only way I will get involved on that is if it's, we got a large buyout. And at our level, there's not many large buyouts. But if it's something that's going to impact the university for a long period of time, or something that's really quick, like if it's like, oh, he's been here a semester and I don't like him. Well, let's try to work through let's mitigate this a little bit. But if it's, hey, at the end of the season, I'm evaluating my staff, this position's not working, this is not going well. If you feel like you need to make a change, then that's fine, because at the end of the day, I'm holding you accountable. Wins and losses, student graduating, academic success, player development, I'm holding you accountable. Mm-hmm. And so if you feel you need to make a change, you better do it.
Last big question for you. Mm-hmm. You're sharing so much wisdom with us, and as you noted, Austin Peay is a very strong mid-major, but you've had experience at the Power 5 level. Mm-hmm. Who are your mentors, and what have you learned throughout your career journey about, again, this managing a staff, managing coaches, managing personalities?
I've been very fortunate and blessed, I'll be honest with you, to work for some great people. Starting when I started in football at Tennessee, Philip Fulmer, Hall of Fame coach. He was an AD for a while. But from the coaching standpoint, I learned that you got to let people work. And he said, here's your job. When I was in charge, this is what you do. But he let me do my job and work through it. And I learned that from him. He was a calm person all the time. He would always tell me, you win, they're going to talk about you. You lose, they're going to talk about you. But you got to be consistent. Mm-hmm. And I modeled that from him. David Cutcliffe was an organizer. He had a plan for everything. If you said, Coach, go build a submarine, he probably got a plan in that notebook to build a submarine. And I learned that you got to have plans. Kevin White, unbelievable. I used to call him the godfather of athletic administrators, and I learned so much from him, just about the organization, how to do it, what matters, the politics of it. Because, you're sitting in the chair 2 or 3, you hear the politics, but you don't understand it. And they got the job at Austin Peay, and one of the first things I called him and said, all right, I get it. It's a different thing when you shift over. But I learned that from Kevin. And then Stan Wilcox, who's with the NCAA now, was for a long time, was my direct boss at Duke. And just patience. If you ever met Stan, and people watch this, he's just patient. Time's bad, he's staying. Time's good, he's staying. And I'm not neither of these guys, so I've kind of taken a piece of all of that, and with my zany sarcasm, and kind of come up with Gerald. and I run my department that way. But I've had great mentors, and golly, I can't thank those folks enough, because I wouldn't be where I am without them.
Well, clearly your staff has a great mentor as well. Thank you so much for sharing your insight with us, Gerald.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me.